If, in the Irish tradition, the emphasis is on Sam Hall as a tragic victim of circumstance, the American variation has him as a heroic outlaw, usually a murderer rather than a robber. The American variant really leans in on the blasphemous oaths introduced by Ross, and we identify with Sam Hall not because of his victimhood, but because of his defiance, laughing along with him as he cusses his way to the gallows. This version of the ballad was very popular in the early 20th century in America, and the ballad scholar Bertrand Bronson wrote in 1942 that this was very generally known and could be heard sung traditionally and vociferously on the West Coast at the present time. Johnny Cash recorded this song twice, once on the 1965 album Johnny Cash Sings the Ballads of the True American West, and then again on 2002's American 4, part of the sequence of recordings he made for Rick Rubin's American Recordings label. In each case, the song was attributed to Tex Ritter and was calculated to help shape and promote the Johnny Cash legend, the complex, multi-layered myth of Cash as prophet, preacher, drunk, outlaw, badass. In the liner notes to the Ballads of the True American West, Cash explained how he prepared to make the album. I followed trails in my Jeep and on foot, he said. I heard the timber wolves, looked for golden nuggets in the old creek beds, and sat for hours beneath a manzanita bush in an ancient Indian burial ground, breathed the west wind and heard the tales it tells only to those who listen. I squeezed the water from a barrel cactus. I was saved once by a forest ranger lying flat on my face, starving. I learned to throw a Bowie knife and kill a jackrabbit at 40 yards, not for the sport, but because I was hungry. I learned of the true West the hard way, a la 1965, but I learned the ways of the West. It's still there. It's wild and hot and unbelievable till you try it on foot. It was the true West. I think that sounds particularly good in an English accent. By including Sam Hall on that album, Cash implied that the song was intended as an expression of this spirit of the true American West, which Cash, in constructing an image of himself, the man in black with a cowboy hat, sought to embody. So it's quite ironic that the ballad's origins are not in fact in the American West, but in the streets of London in the 18th century. But in his 1965 recording, Cash performed Sam Hall as an almost deranged character, laughing and yee-hawing throughout the early part of the song. But then that unhinged quality transitions into anger as he confronts the sheriff immediately before being hung, before mumbling and then cussing under his breath as the music fades out. The effect is that the humorous defiance of the opening verses turns into an increasing desperation as the character faces the gallows. Cash's 2002 version is quite different. This recording was made shortly before Cash's death, when he was suffering with shortness of breath, and indeed this must have played into the decision to re-record Sam Hall, a character who is himself on the point of death. And yet, the effect is an odd one, because the badass defiance of the song is offset by a really jovial, upbeat accompaniment on the guitar and piano, described by Graham Thompson in a review as an outlaw song with a bawdy saloon bar piano that really scoots along. Recall that Ross's Sam Hall in the 1840s was sung to a dismal psalm tune. And in his memoirs, Edmund Yates recalled that Sam Hall was the chant of a murderous chimney sweep, of that name just before his execution. The shift from melodramatic psalm-like dirge to a jovial, perky song of iconoclastic individualism may be attributed to Tex Ritter, who recorded the song in 1935. Cash had consulted with Ritter when he was recording his Ballads of the True American West, and Ritter had proposed a number of songs that Cash recorded for that album, so it's perhaps not surprising that Ritter's influence can be heard in Cash's recordings of the song. But this Cash-Ritter variant, though dependent on the Ross version for its signature blasphemy, disregards the performance tradition in which the song is performed as a psalm-like dirge. And in fact, there's a really interesting question of whether this is, in fact, the same song as the one that's performed by the Dubliners. They both have the same title, but are they the same song? A question I'll leave you to make up your own minds about.